So I'm Matt Bassuk. I am the founder and CEO of Invert Labs. Invert Labs is or NVRT as it's spelled. We are an XR development company, a software development company. We do both XR, AI software development, and we are primarily focused on the HTM space. And so we came out of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology about 2.5 years ago, and we exist solely to start applying emerging technologies to our space, which we know is kind of an underserved market, right? From a technology standpoint, sometimes we're a little bit behind the curve on getting the shiny new things applied to our technicians' workflows, and so we're trying to fill that void. Here's some of the folks that we work with. We've got a lot of really great partnerships, a lot of really great clients. You might see somebody that you know up here on the slide. These are the different kinds of organizations that both use our content and that we do custom development for. They kind of cross the whole span, whether OEM, ISO, health systems, educational institutions, you name it. Okay, so what will the future bring? I think when we think about what's next, where we're at in society, and everybody's been saying the term Web 3 or Web 3.0 is coming. To me, that's really three main things. I think that there's been three big paradigm shifts in technology over the last, say 5 years or so. That looks like this is the stuff that's going to stick. This is what's going to usher in the next generation of technology and everything that we've built on the back of really three things. I think it's extended realities, it's artificial intelligence, and it's blockchain. And of those, wow, this thing is not, we're gonna ditch that. Back up real quick. Of those, I think that there's really two elements that I want to focus on in this presentation. And it's things that we're really laser focused on, which is both extended realities and AI. Blockchain is great. I think that that's going to be a big part of what we're doing. I think that it's got some opportunities for, figuring out how we apply it to things that impact our everyday lives outside of, just make sure you get Bitcoin because it's go to the moon right now. But the other two technologies, extended realities and artificial intelligence, I think have some real sticking power and some really compelling applications, particularly for HTMs that I want to take a look at. So I like to start off just asking some questions. Like how many of you have ever used virtual reality in any capacity? Got 3. Okay. So typically for US adults, it's about 50% of the population say I put it on for one reason or another, just to see what's in the Oculus, or to go to Sandbox VR or some kind of an entertainment situation. And so it's usually about half the room says yes, I've done it. Of the folks that have done it, how many of you have done it for an education purpose, some kind of training or education purpose? Just Beat Saber, that's it. Okay, and that's pretty typical. So in the in our circles, in our groups, we fall in that demographic that really may have some exposure to it, but not really for an educational purpose. It might just be entertainment, and so that's pretty typical. But I like to ask, how many of you have used AI or generative AI? ChatGPT. This whole presentation, ChatGPT. No, just kidding. Yeah. So okay, and I like to ask that too, because I think that's something that we're gonna have to take a look at and think about how that's gonna apply to our lives. Okay, great. All right, so this is like my absolute favorite slide. This is the Gartner Hype Cycle. This applies to everything technology related, and it is basically the cycle of any new emerging technology. So this one is from 2023, and we'll get the 2024 one whenever they give me a prettier graphic for it. But basically what Gartner does is they evaluate all the new emerging technology and they say, okay, where does this fall on the hype cycle? And the hype cycle, it follows a very specific pattern. Every single time there's a new exciting technology that comes out, it hits this innovation trigger, Everybody gets really amped about it. There's new startups being built every day. It's all in the news cycle. You know, you hear just constant articles of, you know, what's AI doing? What's, you know, what's the metaverse doing? And so it hits this innovation trigger. Everybody's expectations go through the roof. We get all these promises, we get all this excitement, and then what happens? I call this the Beanie Baby cliff, right? You ever seen like the the bubble for, you know, stocks or whatever? It's the same thing. It's like everybody gets really excited, we fall off a cliff, then, you know, it turns out some of those promises that we were promised, they didn't pan out. Turns out that, hey, we, you know, we thought that this was going to be game changing, and really it's not impacting my life as much as they told me it was going to. And then we fall down to this trough of disillusionment. And then for really great technology, this happens no matter what. It doesn't matter how good it is. Some technology goes through this cycle very quickly. Some of it, you know, they never make it out of the trough of disillusionment. But for the really great technology, it crosses this gap, and then you start to see it really take hold. So think about QR codes. Who remembers when QR codes came out? Right? This is great. They have one. When these came out, it was like a solution without a problem. Nobody knew how to apply these. We just like, we saw them and we didn't know what to do with them. No one had a native app on their phone to scan it. You had to go to the app store and find something to scan it. And so it was like, okay, well, here's a new technology, but really it's not that great. We went through a really long trough of disillusionment, right? And then what happened in 2020? When all the paper menus went off, and they wouldn't give you a paper menu and walk into a restaurant. Then they put QR codes on the. I hate that. Yeah, how many people use those things? Every time I go, I'm like, can I get a menu, please? I hate that. But that's the whole thing. That technology, it went through this cycle, and it's come out over here, because what happens is, for the great technologies, when there's utility and you start to build into that utility, then you hit this plateau of productivity, because you found how you can actually start applying it in ways that are meaningful, ways that matter. And that's the same thing that we're looking at from that perspective on any emerging technology, whether it's extended realities, whether it's AI, whether it's blockchain, thinking about it from that lens. And so I'm trying to think about other good examples. How many people bought NFT? You guys know what an NFT is? Yeah, me neither. No, right. So it's a token. That's good. It's a token. It sits on the blockchain, but basically they're using it to create digital pieces of art. And if you bought the NFT, then you own that piece of art, even though everybody else can just take a screenshot of it. Like, you owned it. As far as the ledger was concerned, like, it belonged to you. And so, you know, back in, what was it, 2021, I think people got super excited about NFTs, and there were people spending millions of dollars on these pixelated ape pictures, and it was a wild time. Well, they're not NFTs. We fell off that cliff. That we'll see what happens. But utility is going to drive adoption, and I do think that the technology still makes a lot of sense. It's just how it's being applied. It's not going to make sense for, do I own this piece of artwork on the blockchain? That's kind of gimmicky. But think about IP rights, think about copyright, think about your academic credentials, or your certificates. You start putting those things on the blockchain, and now you're hitting this plateau of productivity. So we'll see it come back around. But that's the same life cycle, every technology, and that's the lens we're going to work through here. Okay, so because I'm with, did I mess it up? I'm with Invert Labs, and one of our core functions is to provide XR training. I want to talk a little bit about virtual reality, because virtual reality has gone through the same life cycle, and I've got the premise that we're coming out on that productivity curve now. We've been promised metaverse, and everything's going to be like, we put on a headset and that's going to change our whole lives. Yes, maybe, I don't know. We can talk about adoption here in a little bit, but what I do know is as you find utility, as you start to apply that technology to specific use cases like training, you're coming out the other end of that curve. And you can see it. This is actually Google Trends for just searching for VR on Google. And so back in, what was this, 2012, 2013, Facebook bought Oculus, and that was like the first time in a long time anybody mentioned VR. And then, you know, that kind of that took us on a ride. We got all kinds of promises out of that. Sony started getting into the game. We started seeing all these different headsets pop up, and then, you know, PlayStation VR was released. We got all these expectations, and then we fell off this same cliff. People said, oh, this is kind of a fad, it's kind of a gimmick, you know, I don't really have a lot of utility for this. And then, but it made it through that same trough of disillusionment, and by the time Facebook rebranded to Meta, we got the Apple Vision Pro announcement, you know, you start to see it come back around. It, just from a popularity searching standpoint. I think that's particularly driven by utility, but we'll come back around on that. Okay, so I threw a lot of words at you, and I'm going to keep doing it. But I want to level set for a minute and just make sure that we're all speaking the same language. When I say virtual reality, I mean, what would be the hallmark characteristic of VR technology? The Lively group. What's that? Headset. Yeah, great. A headset. And with that headset, you're going into something that's completely immersive, right? So I've got a picture up here. Who knows what that picture is? Beat Saber, yes, the world's most popular VR game. Thank you. So Beat Saber, what is, you know, that's my primary example. It was the world's most popular VR game. I think Gorilla Tag has just outpaced it. So if you've got any, if you know any 10-year-old boys, they're probably playing Gorilla Tag in VR. But the hallmark of virtual reality is that you're completely immersed. You kill the whole world around you. You spin up into a new reality, and that's how you interact with that software. Who remembers what we were all doing in the summer of 2016? Well, yeah, not me, but yeah, the world was a crazy time. Actually, 2016, it might have been the last time the world made sense. But what we were doing is, I can't get into my pocket, but everybody had their phone out, and you were walking down the street looking for Charizard in the middle of the road, right? And that's a good example of augmented reality, because what is the hallmark of augmented reality? Who knows, you know, what is augmented reality? It's when you have a digital, what's that? Yeah. So you put a digital layer on top of reality, and so augmented reality actually has a lot of different applications. Some of it we don't even realize is augmented reality, but I'll show you a couple of examples. But things like Snapchat filters or Instagram filters, even Google directions now. You've got, you know, if you use the walking directions, it'll actually, as you're walking, superimpose an arrow that says, okay, you got to take a right in about 100 feet, and it's putting a layer of digital information on top of the real world. That's augmented reality. Then you got mixed reality. And these two things are kind of conflating now. We get these interchangeable terms, and people are, you know, starting to lump them together. But mixed reality is basically the same thing, except for you're wearing a headset. And so you've got your digital layer in front of your face, whereas over here you're using a smartphone, you're using a tablet or whatever. Here you've got some kind of interface on your face, a wearable, and that would define mixed reality. And then if you're Apple, you don't care about these terms. You come up with your own, and you say spatial computing, which I love what Apple does, but you know, they think different, right? It's the same thing. So if you hear the term volumetric apps or spatial computing, just know that, you know, we're talking about the same technology, really. Here you go. Here's your guide. It's all virtual reality, right? All right. So here's an example, and this is shameless plug. This is one of our modules. This is a Zoll R series defibrillator. What kind of, which technology is this? This is the immersive VR. That's right. So this is completely immersive. You launch into this virtual biomed shop that happens to not be in the basement by the morgue, but it's actually a virtual biomed shop. And in this example, you're doing a PM procedure on this Zoll R series defib using the Fluke 7000 there, the Impulse 7000. So that's one example of VR. I got some other examples I'm gonna quiz you guys, so chime in. I love this example. So this was at the Lakers versus Pacers last year, and the Lakers the Pacers were putting beat down on the Lakers, so they put them up on the jumbotron with this crying filter on all the Lakers fans. Loved it. But that is what kind of technology? AR, yeah, absolutely. And my favorite use case of AR too. Yes, that's the best. I'm a Spurs fan, so right. It shows filters. Right. Pretty good, right? Here's another AR example. And so in this example, using your phone, because that's the hallmark of AR, is you'd walk up to this device using object recognition. This is an Alaris 8015 with 8100 on either side. It identifies what that device is, and then it puts an overlay on top of the real world. Say, okay, if you want to do the battery exchange procedure, which is what we mocked up here, then you have to flip the device over. You got to take out these 4 screws, and you put the battery pack on and put the screws back, flip it over, hit the power button. So that is another example of augmented reality. That's just a little prototype that we did with the Tenacore back in 2022. I really like this one. So when the Apple Vision Pro came out, people got really excited and started coming up with some clever apps. Somebody decided that they wanted to gamify. Their daily chores, I guess, and so you can kind of see where you vacuumed using, yeah. If you want to walk around the house with the headset on, vacuum, good for you. But I thought that was interesting because that was a cool use case for the technology using mixed reality. Dyson saw that. Sorry guys, wake up. Dyson saw that and they said, you know what, that's really cool. We can do the same thing. And so they pieced together the same application, but they said not everybody's got an Apple Vision Pro. We're going to put it on your smartphone. And basically, they took a mixed reality application and they turned it into an AR application. You can kind of see, they're really similar. Those two things are starting to blend. And you can apply this technology to anything. You can gamify anything. You just got to be careful, All right. Sorry, bathroom. Okay. So this is a really clever application here, and I love this because this to me is the quintessential. Like, this is where we're heading as a technology. When you talk about utility, how is this technology going to add value to my life? How many people have ever tried to put together IKEA furniture? Yeah. And did you do it without threatening divorce? It's tough. No, yeah, that definitely not. But think about, like, if you could wear this device in your head and it could give you visual instructions. Say, okay, well, there's your screws and they got to go over here. And you got to put. But think about that for what we do as technicians. I mean, being able to apply those technologies to be useful, to help us, to give us real-time procedures. That's really what we're excited about. And so I really like this Shopify example. Yeah, absolutely. I love questions.
So that IKEA example there,
Mhm.
and software would be provided by
Yeah, I think in every application is a little bit different, but basically, yeah, you're talking about this being a specific app that it's bring your own hardware. You go to the equivalent of the app store, but on the device. You pull it down, and then you apply that technology to whatever it is you're doing. So you would have your own headset, and then you just download the software. Now,
the application would be very specific.
Mhm. Right. It is actually, yeah. So that's actually one of the major barriers to adoption. So you got it. That's what we're trying to do. That's right. Yeah. And there was a study done, or kind of a survey done, where they asked, everybody in the industry, like, what's keeping this technology back, or what's holding us back here? And it wasn't the technology's no good. It wasn't like people are getting sick. It wasn't. What it was there's not enough content. Like, we just don't have enough use for it because nobody's writing that software. Nobody's putting out that content. And so that is kind of one of our main tasks, is to how do we get more content going. So real quick, I want to talk about this. I love this example as well. This was a mixed reality demo that Porsche did, where they took a bunch of Oculus Quest 3s. They put a bunch of people in a room, and they all are standing around looking at this frame of this new electric Porsche, and it's all multiplayer. They can see each other. They can see the device in front of them, and no matter where you stand, like, that's where that device is. If you walk around to the other side, you see the other side of the device. Really love that idea. We actually replicated that same thing with an ultrasound unit at the AMI in Phoenix this year. Let's see if I got it pulled up. Well, I'll show you an example of it here shortly, or later in the presentation. How many people went to Phoenix for the AMI? So we had they put us at the back of the expo hall, but we had a little space over there, and basically we did the same thing. We had 6 people at a time have on the Oculus Quest, and they're going through we put some games in there. We put like a basketball and like virtual cornhole, but in a multiplayer setting, we had people tearing down a Philips ultrasound, as well as playing basketball or cornhole or whatever, all in this space. It was really neat. All right, so hardware of the future. I'm going to blitz through this piece here because we still have a ton of ground to cover, and I don't want to run out of time. But some cool stuff that's out there. If you think about, is the metaverse going to take hold? Are we going to actually start using this? If you're a gamer, you might, be an early adopter, but there's some really neat hardware out there for this kind of stuff. So here's an omnidirectional treadmill. You can walk around the ruins of wherever this place is. You can walk through downtown Paris, or you can get chased by zombies if you go to one of these places. So, but there's some new stuff coming out too. So Disney just announced this omnidirectional floor, and so here's it's like a multi-directional trackpad, and you can kind of walk around any which way you step. It's going to keep you in the same place, but you can physically walk around. So it'd be really cool in virtual reality. You get this immersive experience. You never have to leave the 4-foot circle.
Imagine a number of people being.
What are we talking about? Costs?
I don't have the pricing for that floor. I think it was just kind of a prototype that they announced, but I can tell you that these style of shoes right here, I think they're on the market now for around $1,200. I think the omnidirectional treadmills are somewhere in that ballpark as well. But again, utility's got to drive the conversation there. If you have an application where you really got to run around quite a bit, then they go get one. But if everything you do is more local, like what we do for servicing stuff on a bench, then it's probably not necessary. I just think it's really neat. There's some really great stuff being put out now. Here's haptics, so things like being able to feel in virtual reality.
The entire system can fit in the hand and wrist, with drive electronics, computation, wireless communication, and batteries. This glove includes high-resolution shape arrays for each fingertip. Uniquely, our haptic arrays are low profile and low cost, and yet highly expressive, both temporally and spatially.
So it's got these little dimples on the fingertips, and like you can actually feel anything that you're touching in virtual reality.
The pumps are solid state with no valves, meaning the only thing moving is the touch surface itself. Our haptic arrays can enable a rich palette of effects.
Oh, here you go. I like showing this one. So there's a contact lens that you put on your eye and you get augmented reality right on your eyeball. And it looks like that. They show you a video of it here in a second, which I don't even know how they got that video, but it's really cool because it'll give you real-time information, on a contact lens. It's pretty sci-fi, and there you go. I don't know how they got this video, but there you go. How many people would put on the AR contact lens? One. It's always one. Every time. Yeah, we're all gonna watch what happens to you, but in every group, it's always like nobody's gonna do it except one guy. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. All right, so let's talk about adoption. How many people have seen this bell curve? So when you talk about adoption, we fall into certain categories, and this isn't a one size fits all. Like you could be on different spectrums for different types of technology. Again, I think all of that is driven by how useful is it to you. I travel a lot. I do a lot of presentations, but I use Uber constantly. Whenever I'm traveling, I pull out my Uber app. But if I walk out of the airport and I have to wait 5 Uber minutes, which is really 15 minutes, for an Uber, and there's a cab sitting right there, like why am I gonna do that? I'm just gonna get in the cab. So again, the theme here is utility is gonna drive adoption, but there's we all fall into these different categories. So you got your innovators. These are your the first movers. They see something shiny, they see something new, they're gonna figure out how to apply it to them. They're gonna go after it. So people that are actively using ChatGPT all the time, maybe they're the first in line at the Apple Store when the new device comes out, although that seems to have tapered. Here, I've got a better one for you. So there you go. Yay, shiny new thing. And then on the other end, you're like, I want my fax machine back. The people that just like, I've so had it with technology. Like I'm tired of learning something new. But this isn't to say like you're in that category for everything. Like I might be personally on this end of the spectrum for all things AI and VR, but you show me that QR code and I'm like, give me the paper menu. I don't want to do this. So think about it, apply it to how you perceive technology. Where would you categorize yourself on that bell curve? But that's really how we as a society absorb these paradigm shifts, right? It's never all at once. We're not all going to wake up tomorrow and have a smartphone, or I'm sorry, maybe that did happen. But there was a time back in 2007 when the iPhone was just first announced. We were just like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, I was excited, but I'm in that category. My parents, their generation, it was like they had flip phones, they had Blackberries. You couldn't take those away from them. And again, that was driven by utility. So I want to show you, if I can, for a second, remind you what it was like back in 2007. Oh, not there. Here we go. I want to remind you what it was like back in 2007 really quick. So this is, they interviewed Steve Ballmer about the iPhone.
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world. And it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well, right? We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices in the market today. You can get a Motorola Q phone now for $99. It's a very capable machine. It'll do music, it'll do internet, it'll do email, it'll do instant messaging. So I kind of look at that and I say, well, I like our strategy. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So we were laughing, right? Or Steve was at the iPhone, and now, what is it? iPhone 23 now. Who knows? Yeah, they're up there now. But back in 2007, this was a big gamble by Apple, and we're like, I don't know, like, is this really going to work? And to Steve's point, everybody's really concerned about the lack of a physical keyboard and replacing that with the touchscreen. And you know, there was some legitimate concerns, you know, if that was going to take hold. But going back to what led that charge, you know, how many people here have a BlackBerry? Had, right? Yeah, I was like, say, pull it out. Let me see it. No way. But you know, the idea then was, okay, we've got something that does what we want. If we're really going to transition everything, something big has to happen. And who remembers what it was about the iPhone that really led that ushered in that new era of smartphones? It wasn't the touchscreen. People didn't like the touchscreen. They thought it was gonna, yeah, they thought it was gonna be gimmicky. Apps, yes, excellent. It was the App Store. So that's what drove the adoption of the iPhone ecosystem, was the App Store. When they announced the App Store, they said, you know what we're gonna do? You're gonna take that utility piece, like it has to be useful, and we're going to crowdsource it. We're gonna give it to the consumers, and you guys figure out what's useful. You guys make it useful for whatever it is you wanna do. And what did we do immediately? We made little lighter applications, or you just flip open a Zippo lighter on your screen, and or you know, that was the first third-party app I ever saw. And then like if you turned it this way, you could drink a beer, and it like you remember it? I didn't make it up. But it was when utility was then gifted to the end user, and they said you figure out how to use it. Everybody had an iPhone overnight, and that's what really drove the adoption. So I want to show you something else, because I'm super excited about this, and I'm thinking about, you know, what's next, right? We've got iPhones in our pockets. Like, what comes? I'm team Android, so where are my Android people at? Yeah, okay. Yeah, where are you at on that curve? You go on your fax machine back, don't you? Stuck in the past, my man. All right, I want to show you one more video here and kind of get your take on it.
$9. It's a very capable machine.
We already listened to Steve. There we go. How many people caught the Meta Connect announcement? Who saw Project Orion already? Oh, this is gonna be great. You guys are gonna get your minds blown.
And something that I want to show you. This is Orion, our first fully functioning prototype. And if I do say so, the most advanced glasses the world has ever seen. About a decade ago, I started putting together a team of the best people in the world to build these glasses. And the requirements are actually pretty simple, but the technical challenges to make them are insane. You know, they need to be glasses, you know, not a headset, no wires, less than 100 grams. They need wide field of view, holographic displays, sharp enough to pick up details, and you need to be able to see through them. And people need to be able to see that through them too and make eye contact with you. Right? This isn't pass-through. This is the physical world with holograms overlaid on it. Or if you want to be with someone who is far away, they're going to be able to teleport as a hologram into your living room, as if they're right there with you. You're gonna be able to tap your fingers and bring up a game of cards or chess or holographic ping pong or whatever it is that you want to do together. You can work or play or whatever. I wanted to add to this keynote a montage of some of the fun reactions that people have had, since it's pretty wild.
My God.
Ah,
Wow. Whoa.
well, that is insane. The weight of this is just such a game changer.
It's comfortable.
Yep.
100
This is
grams
the
is
real deal.
this is a big deal.
Wow, it's super sleek already. This side and no cable.
Yeah,
I mean, that's freedom.
really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, your Kodak avatars.
Is
These are all
3D.
futurists,
Yeah.
like
Can you
they're
link it?
article writers,
No
YouTubers,
way.
people that
The multitasker in me is loving this.
This is pretty crazy that I can do 4 things at once.
The head tracking is good.
that's the CEO of
The
NVIDIA.
brightness is good. The color contrast is good. Field of view is excellent.
I see it
Oh.
super clear.
It's crazy responsive. Learning with these will be amazing.
When this became the television, that became the radio.
Yeah.
That's what's coming next.
This is the coolest thing.
So cool.
That's cool.
This game is so fun.
I am not going to lose this game.
I'm playing with a 3D avatar.
So you're very focused.
Yeah, very focused. You really do kind of feel like a superhero, like a new sense, new dimension.
Wow. This can be just a whole new world.
Cool stuff. Oh my gosh, guys. I'm stoked. All right. You saw it. That's the hype video. This is a real. Think about that. Think about, what does the future look like? Are we actually going to wear those? Do you think it's going to change anything? Is it going to change anything for us on that adoption curve? Where are you at for that product in particular? I'd be interested to know. Like, how many people feel like they'd be early adopters for that? A couple. Okay. Yeah, well, I expected you with the contact lens. But yeah, I think that's awesome. How many people think that, if that's the way the world moves, that maybe it'll come around at some point? Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think it's really unique, and it's going to depend on a few things. It's and just like I've been saying over and over again, like, what is going to make the difference? What is going to be the thing that is the catalyst for the next paradigm shift of technology? When are we actually going to ditch our smartphones? And the answer is the same. When it is meaningful, when it makes a difference, when it matters to our lives, if it's got usefulness to it, if it's got utility, that's when we make this shift. And that's what we're focused on. Yeah. That's a complex question, but basically, we're not in the game of certifying. That's not really our focus. What we want to do is we want to provide availability. We want to provide accessibility to skill sets so that you can be certified by whoever the certifying bodies are. We have really great relationships with a lot of those organizations. But that's exactly it. Is like anything, look what happened. Before 2020, we all knew what Zoom was, right? Nobody was foreign to the idea of doing the Zoom, meeting. Then we had COVID, and everything's on Zoom. Everything's remote. Anything that can be remote was remote for necessity's sake. And now it's like, well, some of that kind of stuff. If I work at a hospital and we've got 3 buildings, you're 2 buildings over, like we have a meeting, I'm not coming. Jump online. Like, you got to justify to me why we have to be in the same room. We can have the whole conversation on screens. Well, the same thing's happening with training. The same paradigm shift is going to happen with training because the necessity dictates that. Anything that we can do remotely, we're going to have to do remotely. We're looking at right now. I got some slides here. I'm gonna roll now. Get fired up. We're looking at a huge changing of the guard in our industry, right? We've got all these people getting ready to retire. How many people are going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years? Yeah. Well, and I asked the same question in all these presentations, and I was sitting in a room with one ISO in particular, and they had 150 techs in the room. I said, how many people are going to retire in the next 5 years? Half the room raised their hand. I looked at the director, like, what's the plan? Like, hello, what are we going to do? We have to make training more accessible. We have to make it remote. We have to make it scalable. How are we going to do that? Well, we got some cool tools at our disposal. We want to start applying them. What's up? There's a lot of startling statistics like that. I've got slides in that too. I just, we'll get around to them and you'll be like, oh yeah, there it is. But it's coming, and we have to be prepared for it. We have to think about how are we going to make our techs more effective? How are we going to train them faster? How are we going to close that skills gap? All the tech 3s that are vacating their position, who's going to backfill them? The tech 2s are going to backfill them. They have to be upskilled. They're leaving a skills gap behind them. The tech 1s have to move into those roles. And so it's just a whole cascading effect. And there's no shortage of skills that we're going to have to figure out how to make that deployable. How do you scale it? All right, XR aside, let's talk for a second, really quick, about AI. I already asked how many people are using ChatGPT. Who knows what generative AI is? Okay, I'm gonna give you some framework. We'll see how valid it is. Machine learning's not new. It's actually been going on for quite a long time. Who knows who that guy is up at the top left? That's Clippy. Clippy was AI. I mean, he did a very specific, he was a bad AI, but he was AI. But AI has been around for a long time. Was it in the 90s whenever Deep Blue, the chess application, beat Gary Kasparov in chess? That was an AI robot, right? So you can say, okay, well, it's not like sentient. It doesn't, it's not like incredibly smart. No, it's what's called narrow intelligence. And so here's the spectrum of AI. I always get asked like two questions whenever we start talking about AI, and it's number one, is it going to kill us? Like, are we looking at Skynet? We got the Terminator over here. And then the second question is it going to take my job? Like, what's the reality? Like, what do we actually, think is going to happen with AI? And they're both really great questions because the answer is not no, but it's also not yes. We have a long journey before we actually think that there's going to be a Terminator. Where we're at now is we started over here. We had weak AI. We had think about Deep Blue. We had your algorithms that are baked into all of your subscription services. Netflix algorithm. It says, hey, you watch this Korean film, you might want like everything Korean. That happens. My wife watches all that. So if you looked at our algorithm, it's pretty much just Korean films. Then you've got Spotify. Like, it's actually pretty good. It always gives me new music that I like. So their machine learning is really great. But that's an example of narrow intelligence. Then you've got the limited memory starting to expand a little bit. You got deep learning, right? So things like facial recognition, speech recognition, natural language processing, which is part of the LLMs. Going in the weeds here a little bit, but basically we started here. We're going to start moving this way. I've got two little icons up here because I think somebody, I can't even attribute it because I don't remember who said it first, but somebody said, can machines think? Is almost the same question as can a submarine swim? If you stop and think about it, it's more of a philosophical question. Like, what is it doing? Is it actually swimming, or is it mimicking swimming? Is it like designed to be accomplishing a similar task? I don't know that I've got a great answer, but over here it certainly looks a lot more like a submarine, and over here it starts to look a little bit more like swimming. So as we go down this journey, OpenAI, Sam Altman and his group, if he doesn't stop losing executives, they are working on general intelligence, or AGI. How many people have heard that term, AGI? So AGI would be what you would think of as, this machine is actually thinking. This machine is actually not sentient, not like, awake and gonna, take over the world, but it's actually thinking and making connections the same way a human would. And so that's what they're working on for AGI. We're not there. And if you were to gauge, by all the executives that are leaving OpenAI right now, they're not close. What we're seeing from ChatGPT 4.0 is probably not far off from what they actually have in their research labs. There's really, really incredible stuff, but we're still not there. We're somewhere along this line. And I put up this dot here for agents because this is multimodal, and agents are the next big thing in AI conversation. There's a story where they gave an agent is basically you give the AI access. You give it access to the internet, let it have some autonomy to be able to make decisions and pull some levers, and it'll do tasks for you. So they gave the bot an assignment. They said, hey, we want you to go do X, Y, and Z. And so what it did is it got on the internet and it had to figure out how it was going to accomplish tasks. It ran into an issue where it hit one of those CAPTCHAs, those questions that are like, are you a robot? How many traffic lights do you see? Well, that's good. That actually worked. Now the robots are actually pretty good at passing those. But at the time, the bot decided, I can't pass this CAPTCHA. I'm going to hire a TaskRabbit, which is just, they went to the job board and found somebody who will do it for $5 and said, hey, I need you to pass this CAPTCHA for me. the person on the other end, they thought, it was a joke. They're like, "You're not a robot, are you?" And it lied to them and said, "No, I've got visual impairment and I need help." And so it made through that hurdle by hiring a human to do the job. But that's what an agent does, right? So I love this story. It's pretty wild, but that's where we're at with AI. Is we've got agents. They have access to the internet. They have special abilities, so to speak. They can do things that humans can do. They can interface with applications, with the web, and so that's kind of the space we're occupying now. The other thing is multimodal, right? So if you know about transformers and large language models, if you've used ChatGPT, it's really good at like natural language processing. But now it's getting pretty good at recognizing images, digesting video, showing that back to you. I want to show you a video. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question. So they kind of, in this experiment, they gave it a budget. They had like I forgot the task it was supposed to do, and I'll find the article and maybe I'll send it out. But yeah, it had a budget. It had like a bank account that it could use. Oh, here you go. This is my favorite chart again, but this one's specific to AI. Where do you guys think we are with AI right now on the hype cycle? Ooh, there we are. We're about to fall off that cliff from a generative AI standpoint. And that's not to say that we won't come out of it quickly, because again, what pulls us out of it is utility. And there's going to be very, very powerful use cases for AI. But I do think that we're going to have to go through the trough of disillusionment here pretty quick, because everybody's been promised everything. We've been talking about it nonstop for 2 years now, and we're probably about to fall off this cliff. I think we'll come out of it pretty fast, but take Gartner's word for it, not mine.
Now, would you say that AI is turning into kind of an iPhone app for AI?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. AI, the way that we think about it is the really, really great models. We think of them as engines, right? And so they're like hardware. So I like that analogy, like an iPhone. It's basically, we have to provide what we want to do. Like, we have to apply our own utility to what it can do, and we're probably behind the curve on that. But it's really good at what it does. They're getting better and more impressive at what they do. We have to wire that up to do things that matter to us, right? And so that's some of the stuff that we're working on at Invert Labs. Is 95% of the data that's out there is private, and so we can wire up the right engine to the data that matters to us. Well, then we've got something we can use. Then we've got a really cool tool. But that's on us to kind of figure out how we apply it. So, yeah, I think that you're absolutely right.
95% is IP.
Right. It's data. It's like, the large language models, they're all trained on like all of the public data in the world. So it's just scraped the whole internet. And, it's read every book that's out there, and it's very good at that. But what it doesn't know, things like service manuals, things like parts numbers, like all that stuff that's proprietary knowledge that's like behind the curtain, it has no idea. So if you can get to a place where you can empower it and load that stuff up into it, well then, instead of it just hallucinating and telling you a bunch of garbage, it's telling you impactful, content. It's giving you, it's a resource for you. And so that's what we're focused on applying it towards. So I'm gonna jam here. I think we're probably a little bit behind. Yeah, we've only got like 9 minutes left. So let me blitz here really quick. I want to show you. Oh, here you go. How many people are Star Wars fans? Yeah, we're technicians. You can raise your hand. We're all a little nerdy, right?
Hey, figure one, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table.
a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the
Playing with fire, guys. We want the Terminator to happen so bad. We're putting GPT inside this menacing looking robot. It's pretty remarkable though, because like I said, the hardware, if we can find the right utility, if we can start applying these technologies to our daily lives, it's so incredible, the use cases. And if it's actually good at it, somebody said, well, let me know when it can fold a fitted sheet. Funny, they have one. I saw it not that long ago. I got to find the video and putting it in my deck, but there's actually a robot out there doing laundry. And so I asked, how many people like Star Wars? What does the future look like? Honestly, I really think it's like it's R2D2 and C3PO. They're just gonna be walking among us here pretty shortly, and they're gonna be doing tasks, and they're gonna be good at some things. They're gonna be bad at other things. Some of them are gonna be really good at very specific things. It's up to us to determine how we're applying it. But exciting things ahead, and I could go on and on and on. But what I really want to leave you with, here's some statistics here on. There we go. Yeah, 40% are 55 and older, 22% are 60 and nearing retirement. This data was from a year ago, so even that's changed. We're still in a growing market, and so this came from some of it came from Elite Biomedical. So everybody Elite, there you go. So I think we're looking at this big labor gap that's coming up, this skills gap, labor shortage, and so we want to apply this technology to that. But what I really want to leave you with is the idea that I'll talk while I show you our little demo that we did out in Amy. Basically, if we're thinking about the next Project Orion headset, if we're thinking about is that going to replace our smartphones? Are robots going to take our jobs? What it ultimately comes down to is the idea that it's really not up to us. We might find ourselves somewhere on that adoption bell curve. We might find ourselves, on the early adopters. We might be the laggards at the back that say, you know what, I want my fax machine. Like, I'm so tired of new stuff I have to learn. But what is interesting is the next generation, that generation that we have to leverage in order to meet this skills gap, is very much inclined to go down this road of the new technology paradigm. And I think that it's up to them to determine where they land on that bell curve. The rest of us, we're all going to be in line at the Genius bar at Apple, and like, my font's on 100%. How do you fix this? But the next generation, they're going to determine what the next paradigms are. They're going to apply the utility. We think that there's going to be really cool stuff that comes out specifically for HTM that we're working on. A whole bunch more stuff to show. We're just out of time. But it's going to be profound. So I got one last video. That project, we actually partnered up with Provo Medical. So Provo is here. I hope he's giving a talk this afternoon. Yeah, and I went down to Tampa and we sat with Hobie and we tore it down and rebuilt it in 3D models and then created that experience. So one final video really quick.
How do you make a heart?
How do you make a heart?
How do you answer the phone? How do you hang up the phone? How do you take a photo?
How do you roll down a window?
I love that. And if you don't feel old, well, you're not paying attention. Yeah, I just think, what we're looking at, the next generation, the next iteration of learning. I asked everybody in this room how many people have done VR training or anything educational VI. We had, when I was working at the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, we had a group of 12 high school seniors come out. They're from health careers schools down the road. And I asked them the same question. I said, hey, how many people have done VR? And out of 12 of them, how many do you think said yes? Yeah, it was 11 out of 12 of them, but basically all of them, right? And then I said, okay, all right, Beat Saber, Gorilla Tag, whatever it is you're doing. How many of you have done VR for education, for something for school? And out of 12 of them, how many think rose their hand? It was 11 out of 12 of them. And that was a kind of it's an anecdote, but it was an eye-opening moment because we realized, hey, if we're not doing this, then we're falling behind. The rest of the world is applying technology to education because it's really, really good at it, right? So I got another slide in here that we missed, but basically it's incredibly powerful because it does a few things very, very well. It increases retention over time, it increases engagement during learning, and it increases confidence whenever the learner goes through the virtual reality simulation before they do the actual procedure. The confidence goes through the roof. And it's something like 230% based off of a few different studies that they did. But, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we need to be doing this. We need to be doing this for our industry. We're looking at the biggest, problem that's impending that we've been talking about for 10 years, but nobody's solved it. Nobody's trying to, we're trying, but we haven't gotten very far in being able to scale, skills.